Come on. There we go.
All right. So hello everyone. This is Ed, your friend, till the end, and welcome to the Suburban Saturn. I am making this video basically following up on the previous one I had made, the introduction video, and part of this exercise is that I'm still trying to get a feel for the kind of voice I want to have on this platform. It's incredibly awkward just standing talking at a camera. It doesn't come natural to me, so I'm still iterating on the kind of way I want to be in this platform. So in any case, I was listening back to my old to the previous video I made, and there were some things that I said that didn't sit quite well with me, and one big one, which is that I got one concept completely wrong. Unfortunately, due to the way I'm formatting these videos, these reflection styles, I'm not really talking with any scripts or notes in front of me. I'm just standing and trying to talk at the camera and structure these ideas a little bit more, I guess, out of memory. And so I fudged a few things, and I wanted to do this video instead of editing the old one. I wanted to just follow up and clean up some of the claims I made that didn't sit well with me and that I want to clean up. And again, for two reasons. One is just being honest. I'm not a journalist. I'm a regular person. I'm not an academic. So if I get things wrong, I will often go back, reflect on it, critique it, and I want to clean it up. I just want to make sure that I'm updating you guys as I update my thinking, or if I fudge something that I think matters, that I come and I clean it up. So it's just me trying to be honest and thinking in real time, which is to the transparency of showing you how I navigate through some of these things. And so because there's so much that I want to cover, and this is all new to me, I just ask you guys to be a little patient with claims that I make or things that I say as well. I'm figuring this out as I go. So thank you again for joining me. And this video is mainly to clean up some of the things that I wanted to clean up. And so that being said, if you have a nice little drink, come and join me, because it's never too late to have cups of coffee, I guess. Cheers. In any case, so first thing I wanted to clean up is ethics versus morality. So I want to separate those two talks. Ethic talk is different than moral talk. And when I say ethical, I do mean a design framework for AI-powered apps, including privacy, consent, transparency, reversibility, autonomy, preserving defaults, and refusing manipulative incentive loops to keep the user engaged forever. So that's one thing, ethic talk, right? The other thing is moral, and those are more claims about good or bad, flourishing, suffering, and those are big questions, and people do evoke them all the time. And it's interesting if you talk to people who identify as atheists, they all have different answers to how they ground their secular morality. And there are many practical ways of grounding secular morality, and it's actually incredibly more simple. It's very simple. If Sam Harris in his Moral Landscape gives a very good, cogent argument for defining morality as a kind of a spectrum between good and evil, and good being the maximum flourishing of an individual subject, versus the maximum suffering with no possible redemption or redeeming qualities within the suffering for an individual. And basically, even if you're treating morality as more of a interpersonal, subjective thing rather than some transcendent, revelatory, feeling, it's still very practical to assume that another person is having a conscious experience very similar to our own. And if we could just abstract a little bit and assume that another person is in fact conscious, then it follows that they perhaps would not want the same things happening to them that we wouldn't want happening to us, right? And so it's not as difficult as some of these conversations that have been happening over the past years, like the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris debates that took place that were huge. I mean, they had a series of podcasts where they traveled to different parts of the world, the United States, Canada, England, I think, and Ireland. I mean, these dudes were literally just talking heads, traveling to different cities, selling out arenas that Justin Bieber or like Taylor Swift would sell out. And this was back in like 2018. I mean, this goes to show you how interested people actually are about these conversations. And these conversations really were about the utility or, they kind of, they're sticky, right? Because on the one hand, they're arguing about the ontological truth of Christianity. We talking about like anthropologically true, what has helped us survive as a species, right? Or are we talking about like a deeper layer of ontological truth, that defines the nature of reality differently than that of the anthropological one, right? The just subjective experience of the Homo sapien, if you will. And it gets a lot to unpack. So on the other hand, it seems like they were arguing about the social utility of religion, even if you acknowledge that, okay, maybe there really isn't God, and maybe Jesus was just some hippie, roaming around Rome and, spreading his own spin-off of a previous Abrahamic religion, basically to say that yes, I don't believe any of the metaphysics of Christianity are real or is real, but I think that as a cultural social reform or structure, it's amazing. And there's a lot of utility and there's a lot of reason to keep it going, even if we don't actually believe in the resurrection of Christ or that, any other, I guess, fundamental, beliefs required to be considered a quote unquote true Christian. But those are two separate conversations. They were tough. They deal with morality. They come from different angles, and a lot of people were interested in them. That's kind of the main point, and it's really hard to entangle the two. So in any case, I just wanted to take time to try to separate some the ethics versus morality claims. What I'm trying to talk about in this series of at least the designs are, it's more, I'm going to just more evoke the ethics side of things, not so much the moral. Maybe those will be reflections that I sprinkle in here and there because they are interesting, of course, and people are having them, and they're going to confront us whether we want to or not. And if you are a secular individual, like, I'm curious how you ground your secular morality, right? Maybe that is an interesting point of discussion we can have in the comment section below or in future videos. But please, tell me how you think about morality. How do you ground it? Are you a Christian? Do you have some sort of moral framework you inherited from your culture? Or are you an individual that's trying to basically forge one based off of, I don't know, a combination of metaphysics and ontological truths? And these are important questions because clearly we care about them as a culture. So in any case, sorry, I got a text message. In any case, I just wanted to clean up that particular thing. And in the coming series of Aurelius, I am more just focusing on ethical design about constraints. And and just wanted to mention that the way I was evoking moral philosophy is more about what we owe to each other and why, which is more of like, okay, we want to design quote unquote ethical apps, okay, but should we design them to begin with? And Obviously, the moral claim would be, yes, we ought to design ethical apps, but that is separate than, hey, here is how to design ethical apps and what constitutes ethical to begin with. So in any case, it's a little long-winded, but kind of worth clarifying. The other thing I wanted to clean up was sweeping claims about the economy and the sandbox language. So in my intro, I used some strong shorthand about the American economy being a sandbox for experimentation. I don't want the argument to depend on hyperbole, though. So a cleaner framing of it would be incentives often move faster than guardrails. Product cycles and competitive markets reward shipping product first. Norms and regulations often arrive after harm becomes visible to people. And so that's kind of like a more of a structural dynamic, right? It's the way the system is set up allows companies to ship product first and then worry about any potential harm later. Of course, they're still held liable to the law, so they can't knowingly ship out a bad product. There's got to be already some sort of testing, some sort of market fit, some sort of viable formulation there that was ready to ship out, I suppose. But oftentimes this means we will release things before knowing exactly or the full scope of how things can go wrong. That arguably is an advantage or disadvantage because basically if you overregulate like you do in Europe, then you could end up at a disadvantage where you're burdened with over testing, with cost and liability, and basically bureaucracy that is preventing you from shipping your product to the people. By the time you're ready to ship it out, you're either bankrupt or someone else has come by and eaten your lunch. In any case, America isn't like that. We don't overregulate, and as a result, we allow for innovation to happen and happen very quickly because a lot of iteration is able to happen within that amount of time. More data is collected. Different people are already inventing tools that other people are iterating upon in more clever ways, I suppose, different ways. So in any case, that sandbox, it kind of is a sandbox, although, I don't want to sound like an asshole. So I just really wanted to clean up the claim about the specific harms of bad reference outcomes as well. I didn't give any specific examples because, I haven't had the time haven't had really the time to really dig into some of these claims, but I did want to mention that there is actually, I think, a term utilized by Anthropic, which are the developers of Claude, and they like to use this label for when a model begins to overhype or over-affirm an individual user's prompts or ideas, discussions with them, right? And this is called sycophancy. And so, although it's not directly linked to this, sycophantic AI models could have been linked to encourage suicide amongst individuals. And there are a few cases. You can go ahead and search yourself and find stories. Now, I don't want to touch those stories, those particular cases yet. This is a big reason why I'm trying to clean up this case right here. I'm cleaning it up in the sense that there are harms, of course, associated with using models that we ship them out to the public without knowing what could come of it, and the guardrails aren't put into place, and then things like this can happen. And this is exactly why I'm arguing for something like ethical designs when using reflective AI for your designs, or for your interpersonal life, your inner life. That is completely separate. This is why I'm evoking people like Bergson to begin with, which actually argue that you cannot successfully derive moral judgment from data sets, if you will, from strictly numbers, that there is a sort of qualia to the lived experience that cannot or has not been successfully reducible to some static thing that can be measured, right? And we'll get into the weeds of that, because that's the last thing I wanted to clean up was my framing and butchering of Henri Bergson's work. And so in any case, to close the other line of thinking, yes, this is precisely why we needed to have some sort of think through of designs before shipping them out, because things like a sycophantic models could lead to I guess emboldening an individual into doing things that obviously are regrettable. And so thinking through how we allow AI into our inner space, our mind, that which we still struggle to articulate for ourselves, we should be careful to ever let it kind of take the driver's seat in any way, shape, or form. And that kind of brings me to my closing point, or here, which is probably going to be the longest. So bear with me. Quick sip of the coffee. So I wanted to clean up reification in Bergson and what I meant precisely, because the main technical correction is that I used the word reification like it was Bergson's terms. My point was close, but the label was incredibly sloppy, because again, I'm just thinking at you, camera, and hopefully at you, individual audience members. I love you guys. Hello. Anyways, I'm thinking at this thing. It's super awkward. I'm just kind of stream of thought, and so I'm sloppy here. And I wanted to correct a few things there. Reification is more of Marxist social theory type vibes. I got a degree in English, so a lot of the I guess conventional framework of viewing anything is through a Marxist lens. All capitalism bad, giving back to the worker good. I'm just kidding now, but it is very much grounded in Marxist lens and criticism of our current social structure. So I still tend to use a lot of jargony academic words from my humanities degree that maybe don't translate too well to the more philosophical academic ones, or an understanding of morality from more of a philosophical lens and less of a Marxist one. And so I wanted to clean this part and articulate that Bergson's actual critique that more aligns to what I was trying to describe in that previous video was to not confuse the snapshot for the flow. And basically he's concerned with how the intellect freezes living change, which he I think calls duration, into static representation. So because static things are easier to handle and act on. So metrics are not inherently bad necessarily, but we do tend to confuse them for the real experience. And this becomes, I guess I would argue, ethically dangerous, because they begin to take the shape of authority over the lived experience. And this is kind of where I was talking a little bit about the aura rings, and I used to love my freaking aura ring, and I would start looking forward to sleep because I wanted to make that score number go up, right? And there were moments where I caught myself actually feeling like I got good sleep, and seeing the score being something like 60%, and then letting that be like, I started to hyper focus on my negative feelings. If I started to overthink, if I started to ruminate, if I started to feel anxious, I was attributing that to my bad sleep, and so I was hyper focused on how I was feeling, the smallest things, to make sure that I could somehow attribute that quality to my bad sleep due to the score that I got. That's kind of the the snapshot for the flow in action, right? the reality is, the score of your sleep doesn't actually dictate the sense of sleep that you got, and letting then that dictate the way I went about my day is exactly, I think, what Bergson is trying to describe in his work of don't confuse the snapshot for the flow. He would tell me, dude, you're letting that thing take over your actual judgment, and that's a no. So in any case, one thing I wanted to clarify, another thing is that basically I a lot of my Bergson's work I kind of supplemented it with Dr. Victoria Trumball. And when I was tackling Aurelius, I had heard of basically, I mean, I won't get into this, but point is, I kind of found her work like about 2 weeks before I launched Aurelius, and the first paper I wrote for it on Medium, which I'll link below if you want to take a look at it. It shows you the system architecture of Aurelius, how it was built. It's basically a methods and manifesto for building an app using this framework that I'm kind of laying out right here. So if you already want to skip to the end and basically know what Aurelius is, go ahead and click on that link below. But for now, I don't spend much of my time doing critical analyses of a lot of these texts necessarily, right? I just read them, and what sticks, what doesn't. And sometimes, in order to actually delve deep into the arguments, you have to refer to, at least I would say, you have to refer to the secondary text, which is what are the experts saying about the thing, right? And understanding a bit of that framing. And so I do lean a lot on Dr. Victoria Trumball's work explaining this, but there are a few things that I'll link below, 2 sources here on YouTube that I found so useful, interesting conversations taking place. But in any case, I'm kind of leaning on her framework here, and I hope I get it right. And her, basically, I think Trumball would frame it this way, or Bergson's central claim or central aim is to restore time and change to the heart of reality. And there are specific definitions to time and change, but we'll leave that aside. She would probably say, she says, he diagnoses the intellect's tendency to immobilize the living into static concepts and solids. And his methods emphasizes returning to lived experience, not letting conceptual machinery pretend to replace it. So when I apply Bergson to apps, I'm not doing an anti-tech. I'm doing anti-snapshot as authority, which was the trap I fell into when I was trying to let my Aura ring tell me how I ought to feel, how I should feel based on the frickin' score I got. And I'm like not even completely aware of the mechanism that it's using to aggregate data or to capture my vitals. So I'm not even sure how accurate it necessarily is, but I let it affect my mood, and I let it confuse me into thinking that there needed to be something wrong with me based on this score. So in any case, that's kind of what we mean by confusing the snapshot for the flow, and the flow is hard to capture through data points. That's actually the biggest issue, right? And so in any case, AI, the claim I'm making, and the reason why I'm evoking Bergson is because, like, if I were to refine my argument from the previous video, is that ethical design for AI apps can touch inner life, but should not replace inner life, and should have guardrails, if you will, against interpolating the individual using AI. So basically, what AI would be allowed to do in this ethical design lane would be to ask better questions to the individual. So some sort of Socratic prompt, mirror language back to the user, pattern noticing with uncertainty, if you will, support memory and context without rewriting identity. latter one is a little tougher, but offer a hypothesis as well. Never verdicts. So basically, they should be designed to help you introspect deeper, but never to make identity claims, like you are X thing, right, as a default, or no single truth claims of well-being. No prescription presented as moral authority. So like no, therefore you should or you ought to, and no coercive optimization loops, streak worship, rank virtue, punitive compliance, none of that. So this is what I mean by ethical reflection tech: prompts, not prescriptions; mirrors, not judges; user governed and reversible. And I've interwoven my examples with the wearables because I feel like that is a simple example, but in reality we tend to do this with a lot of things in our lives. I mean, I think we as humans intuitively fall into the trap of wanting to abstract ourselves into like dashboards that you can tweak with the knobs and somehow perfect your qualia, your experience, your sense of well-being. You can interesting things to think about, but in any case, wanted to clarify those things. At the end, I'm going to outline the trap clearly. Again, I'm not an academic. I'm just some dude online trying to make sense of these things, reflecting at you guys, and that's about it. In any case, I'm just doing the best that I can. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. Trying to make sense of these things, reflecting at you guys, and that's about it. In any case, I'm just doing the best that I can. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time.